Hey guys, welcome back to the show. We have an announcement to make about the conference. Unfortunately, Sue Walker had to back out due to some health issues, so she will not be joining us this year, but it's okay because we had Margie Kay wanting to present anyway, and she's ready to go. So we are switching out Sue with Margie. And if you guys caught our episode with Margie, a lot of people loved it. She's amazing. And she has a great presentation in store for us. So it is official. Margie Kay has been added to the lineup. And tickets are still available if you guys want to join us May 22nd through the 25th in Grafton, Illinois. Live stream passes are available also for $99. And as of April 1st, day passes will be available for $88. All of that information is below at journeytotruthcon.com. Guys, don't forget we started our Patreon just recently. Our first webinar was the UFO for Dummies. It was more of a UFO history timeline. And we plan on doing monthly webinars on our Patreon. So go sign up over there. It's only $5 a month if you want access to that. There's other exclusive content that we'll be uploading there shortly. I think up next,
there's already some exclusive content.
There already is. Yeah, including the conference that was, or the documentary that was filmed at our conference last year, which is great. It definitely does the secret space program some justice. I think it turned out really well. And Aaron, you want to tell them about what you're getting ready to upload?
Yeah, I'm going to upload a video just telling my awakening story. Yeah, just my story of how I kind of woke up to all of this stuff. And I hope to have that up sometime later today, actually. So
that'd be great. Awesome. Awesome. So today we are joined by Beth Rachel. She reached out to us a few months ago, and we've been chatting back and forth. She's an author. She just wrote, and she just sent me the first chapter of her new book that's not out yet, but it's called Starseed Landing, and it's brilliant. I mean, I think it's excellent. Aaron read it as well. I can't wait for the whole thing to come out, but it starts telling her story. It's amazing, and I can feel it's coming from a place of authenticity. So I always appreciate that. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. So I guess just let our audience know who you are and how you found your way into this realm, and and what you have to offer, and we can go from there.
Yeah. Well, so I too have, of course, like everyone else, an awakening story. Mine's a little different in that it was sort of like a reawakening story, in that there were a lot of things I suppressed from childhood that I had fragments and pieces of that didn't really understand. And when I started to really wake up, these pieces started to come together, and the unfolding of the full story came streaming through, which involved ritual cult experiences, childhood sex trafficking, and secret government programs, multiple programs. In those experiences I had, I think that more and more people are coming out, and we're aware that, these programs are happening and have been happening for some time. For me, my experience was a little bit different in that I had this tandem relationship with the light. So I was having these dark government experiences, but I was sort of working with the light as sort of a secret agent, and I would go back and forth and get assistance from the light, but also be going in with programs from the light just as much as the dark in some ways. I mean, there was more, agreement over here on a conscious level to help liberate or infiltrate, or really it's, so much of what goes on is like attempting to stay one step ahead of the other. And so a lot of those sort of tactical ways that I was used was in that regard of attempting to stay, the light, attempting to stay one step ahead of the dark, or knowing there was this big incident being planned, and how can we adjust the timeline? What actions can we take to adjust the timeline in order to prevent this or soften it, etc. And then the dark kind of doing the same thing, right? So that was a lot of what I began to uncover. And through that experience, I had a multitude of helpers. It had sort of a team that would help kind of put me back together, and get me back out in the field, so to speak. And some of those were being celestial beings, several different races of ETs, primarily Syrian. I also spent some time with them on ships working with healing and rebalancing the grid system. And inner earth beings were also some of my helpers. And then there were both within the government, we have and the military. They're not all on, the dark team. So some of those also were employed in some of these tactical engagements, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the way you worded it in your book. A warrior embedded in the, what did you say? A warrior of light embedded in the dark.
Yeah.
And it's a great way to put it. And, and you're being used as moves and counter moves constantly. And that's what we see right now. That's why when we hear like something is supposed to happen, but it doesn't happen, we have to take into consideration that exactly what you just described is happening. They're always trying to stay one step ahead of the other guys. And for every move, there's a counter move. And in the fog of war, things change. So
yeah, it's like galactic energetic chess,
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
right.
Extrasensory chess, remote viewing chess, however you want to say it. It's, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they do have a lot that they employ that is in future projecting. They use a lot of their technologies, and a lot of the children or other people that are working or they're using, to look at the future possible timelines and then take action in hopes of like, okay, so what would happen? And they'll even have you check, like, what would happen if we do this? And what would happen if we do this? So that they can make, the best decision,
mm-hmm.
for them.
And you think I guess they would be using like a looking glass type of technology to pull that off, you think?
They have several different technologies they can use to look into the future, and looking glass is one of them. Looking glass was developed, with a combination of certain technologies that already existed and abilities from starseeds like myself. So I can remember being used without a technology, just put into a certain mind control state to project, to remote view into the future,
right.
without an apparatus, and I know that for other people as well too.
Mm-hmm. And they also have the ability, like your book is called Starseed Landing, and you talk about how they hijack our landing, basically, and they have like preventative measures in place to keep a starseed from ever waking up. And that's kind of where your story comes in. So you were able to navigate through that. And I'd just like to hear a little bit more about like how you believe that they're doing this and how they're targeting us as we land.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a couple different ways, right? I mean, first there's sort of the matrix that everyone who comes is affected by, the limiting programs that are just sort of wrapping the earth. So everybody gets affected by those, even the starseeds. Because even when they're holding that higher truth, they come into parents that can't quite support it, and the system in general, the school system, all of it is designed to keep us limited and disempowered. Every system we have in place right now is designed from that place. So that's sort of like in general, everybody gets that. And then for the starseed specifically, there's a couple different ways in which they're tracking them. So they are tracking them through the future projecting, so that they're aware of when they're coming in through looking at the future. They track human genetic lines that they know starseeds have shown up in, and starseeds generally return to the same genetic line, both because their soul family is connected to that, and because that DNA has stayed a little bit more active than some of the other lines because of its, starseed relationship. So, so they've been tracking that part of it for a really long time. So those are the two main ways, is that they're tracking what's already been happening, what's been showing up in the genetic lines that are here on the earth. So they know that if they've got two starseed parents, the likelihood of them birthing a starseed child is high. And if they've got two different genetic lines, then they're even more excited, because then they know they've got the DNA of two starseed lines at their disposal. So they really keep a close eye on those.
And then when you say targeted, I mean, most of our audience knows this, but just to go over it again, because like right out of the gate, the whole birth certificate thing is basically you being sold in the first place to these corporations. So
sure, yeah.
So then you're I guess potentially looked at by different secret organizations and governments and even branches of the military, shadow government type groups like that. And then they decide what they can use you for based on your abilities. Is that how you would say it works?
Well, it depends. So, I mean, looking at the birth certificate, sure, that's one way, but I mean, they're looking at this all energetically, right? This is all on a psychic playing field. So they don't need that piece of paper to tell them, who's who. It is definitely important because it is one of those systems I was talking about, right? And maybe that's what you meant. Like, it's another way in which we're automatically kind of giving up our power, and becoming part of. But that's not the only way. So that they also track. Okay, so government programs do their recruiting in a couple different ways. One of those ways is through cults, because the children they're already mind controlled. They're, really easy to get in there and control further. They also have already been like leaving their body and using their abilities if they have them, which most everybody does on some level or another. So they're prime, right? And their parents also more than likely are also involved in the cult, and so are going to give them certain access. The other main way is through the mill labs, which are usually guised as special programs for your special child. And sometimes that's focused on, like they're academically special. So we want to give them, a program. And sometimes they come right out and say, that it's for their extrasensory abilities. So from both of those 2 points of extraction, they start running the children through series of tests to see exactly which abilities they display. And then from there, they decide which programs they're going to do best, I kind of hate to say it, but like that they're going to perform best in, right? Based on the abilities that they're displaying.
Right. So do you have any memory of any specific groups that you were a part of? Like, or do you just have like vague memories that are out of context? Or do you know like this branch of the military was using me, this government agency was using me?
Yeah, most of my use was through secret government. So my situation was a little bit unique because I had this direct line to the light. So when I came in and I agreed to be embedded in that way, I remember coming directly from Sirius, which is not the only DNA that I bring with me, but it was like the direct line. And when I made that kind of announcement that I was going in, because I had this idea that like, we were going to free everybody from the inside out and, make everybody, realize that that was the way to win. And anyway, different realizations came later, but my father, my Syrian father, he was kind of like, well, if you're going, I'm going. So he ended up taking the role. He came in more as a shapeshifter. So he didn't fully like birth into human form. He came in as a shapeshifter and embedded himself in the military as a general at the head of the program that I was used for. And the program that I was used for was a little bit unique in that they look for certain children. I've been told the word principal. There might be another word for it, but a principal is a child that displays abilities in multiple areas. So they have telekinetic abilities, they have telepathic abilities, they have the remote viewing abilities, they may have mind projection abilities, or thought projection, so on and so forth. But they have this array of abilities. They end up in a specific program that he had assigned himself to kind of be, an overseer of, at least in this generation, right? I don't know exactly what that's been in the past. And then from there, they utilize this group of kids to help refine some of their programs and develop technologies that they want to utilize.
So help me understand your
Yeah.
father coming here, but not incarnating in the way that we would recognize, but embedding himself in the military as like an entity working through people.
No, as a general, like he would show up in physical form. He just didn't come and through the birthing process. So he would take his physical body, his Syrian body, and just have the ability to shapeshift into human, so that he appeared human. Yeah. So to everybody else's knowledge, he was this general, and this was the role that he played.
I see. So if you didn't know any better, just thought he was a regular human general.
Yeah.
I see. So that would explain how some of the shape-shifting occurs. So I guess, like, what do they do? Trick our mind, trick our visual cortex so that it's like an illusion that we see a human, even though it's actually something else? Or do you even understand how that works?
Different races have different abilities. The way that he did it is actually just they can molecularly shift their DNA.
Okay.
So it's not, it's similar to teleportation, is really just, molecules coming apart and back together. So it's working with that ability of basically molecules coming apart, coming back together, but rearranging them. So he's maintaining the same consciousness the whole time. He's just rearranging his physicality, because they're operating at a different level of consciousness than we are in human form right now.
Yeah. Thank you for explaining that, because I've heard multiple different explanations on how it. Go ahead.
Well, I think the reptilians do it in a different way.
Yeah.
I think that they are, they use some technology similar to what you were talking about in manipulating our cortex, coupled with a few other things like kind of more projective holographic devices and things. Yeah. But a little bit more mind play rather than molecule arranging. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like a mind control / holographic overlay / frequency. I've heard like one of the purpose for all these 5G towers and this entire network, this grid of towers, is to keep the earth at a certain frequency, at a certain resonance that maintains that illusion. And like I've heard that if we were to destroy those towers and that frequency stopped playing, we would actually see the reptilians for who they were. So that they're like relying on that frequency to stay hidden. So
I would definitely agree to say that there's a huge mind control frequency being run through the 5G towers. And I think that had a lot to do with COVID and, a lot of other things. And so I wouldn't be surprised if it's influencing that. I don't know if I would say it's the only, aspect, because they've been doing that since before 5G towers, but I think it definitely has induced a whole other level of like group hypnotic state programming.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way they get us to unconsciously accept and agree to our own suppression in a way.
Yeah. Well, their techniques and tactics has changed throughout time, but they're very clever, and they, with technology, are getting more and more clever, and it's getting easier and easier for them. And I think, one of my biggest concerns right now is the push towards transhumanism for that reason. Yeah.
That's their number one game right now, I think.
Yeah, I feel it's definitely at the forefront, and it's concerning when you see how easily people slip right in there. And I think that the technology of whatever's in those coupled with the 5G, it's like,
Right.
that frequency matches those nanobots. That's why it was designed that way, as far as, my information comes in. So,
Mhm.
you've kind of got like a frequency and a receiver. It's,
Right.
yeah.
So then, so your father embedded himself in the military, and that he came first. Then you, when you were born here, somehow you were already selected to be a part of that group, is what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll just say, yeah, no one was unaware of my family's genetics. I'll say that much.
Mhm.
So, yeah, all of the things that I was involved in from, pre-birth. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So at what age did you start realizing, oh, hey, there's something more going on here. Like I might be involved in these programs. I have these memories. When did all that start happening? And then you start tapping into your own abilities, I guess.
Yeah. So, when I was 15, I had an experience that brought me to a point where my soul was no longer willing to participate in the way that I had, with the back and forth between the light and the dark and the war, essentially.
Hmm.
Um, in order to be extracted from that, I had to kind of be my awareness of that and of my abilities had to kind of be put to sleep. So I would say within a couple years, some things started churning in me. I started reaching out and looking for ways to wake myself up. Started by the time I was 17, I was like at the crystal shop, getting readings from the intuitive healer, reaching out in all of these ways. And I think I was 20 when I had my first flashback. And yeah, I kind of repressed it. I wasn't quite ready. Um, and it was a couple years later that things really started to stream in. And then when I hit my Saturn return, it was like, boom. I was just like, pull the string on the sweater.
It was
And
blown wide open. Yeah.
mhm, yeah,
Interesting.
yeah,
And so you mentioned, obviously, this is a huge healing. This is the start of a healing journey now, too, when this happens to any of us. And you mentioned in your book how you talk about the dark energy and how we talk about this dark energy trying to come in sometimes, but really your opinion is that it's within us trying to come out, and it's showing us what needs to be healed. Can you go into that a little
yeah,
deeper?
yeah. And it's not to say, obviously, there is this sort of war going on the external. But I really feel that our solution is internal, because it's really about disengagement. And it's hard to do that when we can't see the places where we have participated. So when we go inward to look for that I kind of mean that twofold when I say it, as in I watch people a lot of times, even clients who come to me, or I watch people in ceremonies, but there's this dark energy trying to get at me, and I can see that actually what's happening is that they have some trauma that they haven't dealt with. It's getting triggered. And what happens when we experience that is we have like this open portal through time to that event. And that part of us, when it gets triggered, it opens that portal. So it seems like the dark is trying to, come get us right now. But really the reality is that thing already happened and it hasn't been resolved. So that wound is still open, that portal is still open. And going into it, which is not the comfortable choice, but I do believe it is the necessary choice to go into it, because we left that precious part of ourself within that as well. So when we can heal that experience, and bring resolution to that dark that we're identifying as a threat, and recognize that it is no longer a threat, and bring ourselves more into wholeness, that's true expansion. And when we get into that place of true expansion, then we're empowered, and it's like, it doesn't really matter what's going on. What the dark, the light can play whatever game they want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you nailed it. And I think going back to what you said when you first started saying that, how you can't, if you don't know where you've been and how you've been using these programs, you don't know what needs to be healed. And that's the hardest part, is coming to the realization that something bigger is happening. So, like, what did that look like for you? Was it just like, did you have any concept or awareness of these programs, or did the memories come first?
I did, and I'm grateful that I did. I actually was practicing theta healing at the time. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that healing modality, but it works a lot with repatterning the subconscious. So basically, I was practicing that for several years, like waking up my unconscious, not really like knowing, or that wasn't my intention, but that's what was happening. So my subconscious was getting primed this whole time, and I had an array of clients coming to me who had ritual programming, who had all kinds of abuse, but ritual programming, government project programming, clients who were even still being accessed, which was scary at the time, because I didn't have the boundaries that I do now, and I didn't really know how to handle it. I just knew I could feel it and I could see what was going on. I would work with deprogramming them, and they'd come back the next week and someone had rearranged the programming that we worked on. And it was like, oh, okay. And that was before I had come to turn, I had like really hit my stuff. But so I was very aware of how it worked. I was also used as a kid in a lot of programming as my memory started to come up. So I understood more deeply like what was going on with the mind and how that worked, which helped me a lot, actually. But yeah, I was very aware. I also simultaneously in tandem had a friend who was working as a therapist, and a lot of therapists don't know about this stuff, but this person she was training under happened to know. And so all kinds of information was coming through that channel, as well as I was, unraveling my own information.
Interesting. And you mentioned, so when you started deprogramming your clients, also, I want you to explain what you offer, because I don't think you've told our audience yet, as far as what you offer, as far as sessions go. Can you do that first, and I'll follow up with my question?
Yeah. I mean, I don't normally call it like deprogramming. It just seemed appropriate in the context of what I was saying. But I do work a lot with repatterning the subconscious, right? And as it is a reflection of our outer experience. And when we've had these kind of traumas occur, we get very, there's a lot of twisted definitions of things. There's a lot of twisted perspectives of things. There's a lot of limitations, and the programs themselves there's time release programs. There's programs that don't get triggered until you hit the memory. There's looping programs. So all of those really require us to go into them, and for the client to really feel what was up when that happened. There's a real presence required from the client in order for us to start to disentangle what they accepted as truth at that time.
What do you mean by time released programs?
Yeah, well, there's some programs, I mean, they have a way of putting programs in that are, for instance, like different preventative programming, right? So, in order, if you are to come out with a certain amount of truth, right, whatever they define and program as truth as you sharing, then, this is going to happen. Whatever that thing is that they threaten you with. And that's put in a certain way that as soon as you hit that space where you're even considering telling your truth, you hit the program and you're in that terror and you don't even know why.
Right.
Because the program was like, oh, your whole family's going to be murdered. You're going to be whatever it is. It's different for different people. But yeah.
So then going back to that dark energy. So there is like a counter move in place already for when we start waking up, which could be considered an attack from the external. And while you're fighting your own inner demons and trying to heal that, there is things happening in our lives. Some people are targeted because they're star seeds, and so there is an external force also. So it's really interesting. You said like you'll work with somebody and then something happens. What you say is rearranged somehow, and then they come back to you, and so you have to work through that. And so that shows you like the lengths they'll go to suppress these people.
Yeah, yeah, and it's internal and external. But if we don't have the point of attraction on the internal, then the external doesn't, doesn't have anything to come into.
Right.
Yeah. So that's why I say focus inward, because if you clean up what's inside, then there's not that point of attraction anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's why I can come to you now and share this story, right? Because I've cleaned up what's inside. Not that there's not still more, because I still go through stuff. Yeah.
I've heard different people say that the lower your vibration is, the more that they can hook into you, the more that the dark can connect to you. So really your inner healing and your raising your vibration naturally almost prevents the dark from being able to connect to you, because you're at too high of a frequency. So there's that aspect. It's almost just like, it's just science, really. It's just like,
yeah, there is that.
It's just the reality of it's like, if you're really healed and you love yourself, you have self-love and self-worth, you're not going to be susceptible to entities really, and to like these dark, and to even these frequencies they're beaming, these mind control things and all the different manipulations. You're not going to be nearly as susceptible to any of that stuff. So the biggest thing you can do is to work on yourself. Mm-hmm. And as you awaken, then you're going to be your frequency is affecting, whether you realize it or not, everything around you, everyone around you, on a subconscious level. And that's going to help wake other people up and affect them in a positive way. So it's like, a lot of times we get caught up on only the external, and we think we have to do external things and fight this external war, when really it's within. It's
Mm-hmm.
really an internal process. Mm-hmm. And then that's going to manifest externally. And that's why the best thing that can happen on a collective level, we see these negative things happening, and on one level, it's terrible, but it's great, because it's waking people up, and it's forcing people to deal with their shit. And it's like breaking people out of their zombified state and their patterns and their mind controlled state. So I feel like a big process of this awakening is, it's almost like the dark is being allowed to go to do a certain amount, but they're not going to allow the planet to be completely destroyed. That's why they're not allowing nukes and things like that. They're not going to allow us to be completely destroyed, but everyone's being given an opportunity to heal, to awaken, and to see what's really going on, and then understand who you are in relation to that, and realize our own power. And it's the whole thing. So but we have to be the ones to wake up. No one's going to do that for us. No one's going to save us outside of us. So it all comes back to, we are the ones we've been waiting for.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. That's why I think it's so important for these starseeds to wake up, because they're carrying so much with them. Many of these starseeds are, have been around for a long time, creating planets and systems, and it got to the point where it was like Earth was not really moving forward. So we decided to come incarnate, and so if they really deal with their stuff, then you've got these pillars, locked in, that are vibrating at that frequency. And it makes it so much easier for other people to wake up.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
And you mentioned earlier, like somebody being scared, or they'll be too scared to talk, or be traumatized by something that happened to them. So they just almost, obviously these attacks are in place. So you throw in the towel and you walk away and you just shut up. That's what they want you to do. And I see people even doing that on a surface level, like online, people are like, oh, I'm walking away from the truther community. I'm done. It's too toxic. This and that. I'm like, that's literally by design. That's what they want you to do.
You fell
Like,
into the trap.
you
Exactly.
fell into the trap. Like everything that
bought
you're
it.
experiencing right now is happening by design. You're right there.
Bless you.
Yeah.
Bless you.
Bless you. Everything that's happening to you in that moment to make you want to walk away it's a test. It's happening by design. So you just like, I'm done with this. I'm going to go back to my job in Matrix or do whatever and just live my peaceful life. They're like celebrating when somebody does that. I feel like that's one less voice for them to have to worry about.
Also,
Yeah.
oh, sorry, really, really quick. I feel like people feel like they have to join a community or join, like, it's not about that. Like, a lot of people, they're like, oh, I'm walking away from the truther community because everyone's so in fear and everyone's trying to put their beliefs on everyone else. And while, yeah, that is very much happening, I observe that as well. And that's been happening for a while. That's each person's own individual journey. That's where they're at. But there's no like, it's not like a religion that you join. It's not like, oh, this is the belief system that I'm joining in, like this group. It's like you can interact with these people while not joining any. Don't join any group. Don't be like, I am a part of this community. I'm a part of that community. It's not about being a part of the community. It's about connecting with like-minded, like-hearted individuals and being a sovereign being within that.
It's a movement. So there's no truth community. It's a global movement. Like,
right.
Like if you think that you're in a community, that's exactly what you're in, but it's really global. And anyway, you were gonna say something, Beth.
Yes. Sorry,
no, it's fine. I was just gonna say that, you were talking about sort of those pressure cooker moments, when people are like, okay, I'm out of here. I know I always feel like, okay, Annie up one more time. It's like we have to keep Anning up
right
in those moments,
right.
When we want to leave, because that's what it takes.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it takes. It takes being pushed to the limit and beyond. And, I know that's what I went through, and remembering it is painful enough, but being pushed to that absolute limit is that point in which we let go of the fight, which is what is necessary in order to really move forward.
Yeah, that's what you said in your book, referring to your book like it's a book. It's one chapter, but there's so much. It's so jam-packed full of great information. You talk about the ultimate goal is disengaging from the war, not like choosing a side. Like you have to find that neutral ground or that balance. It's not really about us versus them or good versus evil, which it is on a surface level. But to rise above that, can you explain what you meant by that a little more, please?
Yeah. For me, I'll share how I got to that place, because I think that is also helpful. In my last government mission, I was sent to access a device. I was under a mind control program. I was sent under the ice to access this ancient device. And the goal being for the dark, the shadow, to gain some access to it, because they hadn't been able to gain access to it. With my Syrian DNA, it's a Syrian device. The idea was, okay, we get a Syrian child to do this with the right programming, we can get in there. I had already kind of gone through some things within the previous 6 months that really were getting me to a place where I was very weary in my continued participation in this back and forth and this war game. So I was already on the edge. And when I touched this device, it sent this frequency through my entire being and shot me out of my body to my soul and showed me the recreation of the entire planet, how it was done, reminded me of the intention of which it was done. And I heard it's not about winning. And it was such a powerful moment for me that when I came back in my body, I sent a telepathic message out to my people, my group, and I was like, come get me, I'm done. Like, come get me. And And they did. And there was quite a process to get me out of that. And it did involve, really me going to sleep in a lot of ways. But I didn't have to play that game the same way anymore. There was still some involvement in some cold things and some other things that took longer to disengage from because I didn't have the same amount of help. But in that moment, I really got that the moment you pull out of participating in any game, right? Doesn't matter what the game is, then it's not the game anymore. So
Right,
it's not
right.
about winning over, either side winning over the other. It's about stopping. It's about disengaging.
You're feeding into the energy of it when you're fighting it.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter which side you're on. People all the time talk about like the light's winning, and I'm like, if you only knew how many times I have been in the thick of it with the idea that the light was going to win,
the dark has no power. The dark has no power apart from the light or God or source, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is this is a game that has no ending. It's been going on forever in different incarnations, in different galaxies, in different, it's like
duality. It's duality.
Yeah. Right. And there's no way to win at duality. There's no way to win.
Right.
What's that?
And at the higher dimensions, the higher you go, the less duality there is because the unification is greater. I mean, everything is one, but we have a very strong illusion of separation on this third density level. So the duality is very apparent. It's very prominent here, but ultimately we are all one. So we're all affecting each other all the time, no matter what. And you are essentially fighting yourself when you're fighting anything outside of you.
Absolutely. Goes back to that inner work, right?
Doing it to yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. And I, from what I know and what I would share in the rest of the book, that first chapter, by the way, is available for free on the website to anybody. So on my website, bethrachel.com. Yeah. But, as I continue to dive into that story, the story that was told to me by actually communicating with the planet itself, is that this creation, this experience or experiment, whatever you want to call it, right? This earth, this planet we have is designed to be a microcosmic experience of unity consciousness. So when we really land here and we really plug in and we really allow ourselves to be an extension of the planet, it becomes that same unity that we're searching for in, the talk of like we're ascending. It's like, it's really, again, a journey within. It's already here available to us. We've just got so many layers of bullshit programming on top of it that we can't see it. So it's like, we got to, take those off, go inside, do our deeper work, and then really like connect in with what's already available.
Right. And
yes, amen.
Right, exactly. And going back to what you mentioned about like this, these narratives we hear about the light is winning, the white hats are in charge, whatever, in control. A lot of what I've noticed is we're experiencing storytelling, like dramatized storytelling, and it's just like creating these false narratives in a way. Not that these things aren't happening, but I feel like a lot of these influencers and a lot of these big names, like when you really go and listen to them, you realize I'm just listening to these like stories that can't be validated one way or the other, and like you're giving your power away to that. What are your thoughts on that?
Which story specific? Can you be a little bit more specific?
I just mean when we hear like, oh, everything's cleaned up, we've won, the evil's gone,
or like disclosure is going to happen in 2 years, or
right.
the ETs are going to land in 2 years, and QFS is going to happen next year, and the EBS is going to happen next month.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I mean, some people may not like my perspective of it, but I don't listen to any of it, and I'll tell you why. And the reason is because I do feel like it ends up being a lot of drama. There's that one. Two is that well, I worked for the White Hats. I went in as a child to rescue like embedded, like let her be kidnapped, let her be taken to the slaughterhouse. I've seen all the things that you hear about. Like I've seen them. I've seen the fields of the pods of children being grown. I've had adrenochrome extracted. I've firsthand seen it all. And I'm going to tell you that like that story is never going to end. It's never going to end. And they are constantly playing, let's stay one step ahead of the other. So for me, I'm like, I put myself through hell for those, those rescues or those encounters or those, for somebody to get one step ahead. And there was just nobody telling the story at that point in time. And so now there's just somebody telling the story. But the other thing I think that happens, and this happens both within disclosure community and the ascension, it happens everywhere, is like there's these energies of distortion that come in and spin the story. It's like, okay, well, where is that information coming from? Like, who told you that this is happening? Who's the source? Where is the source coming from? And I think it gives people a lot of false hope. I think it really works people up to like, there's a rescue happening, or there's there's something that's going to take me out of this pain. And I think that it's really like disheartening for me to watch, because I think it's putting people through this, like, bring them up and then let them down and then bring them in. And some of the things I hear, I'm just like, no, that's not like,
right.
That's not the situation. And it bums me out, because I think that people are really being taken advantage of in their inability to discern truth, because they've been lied to for so long, and they get all these injections of all these different lines of story. And there's no way to ascertain truth, because it just hasn't been part of the vibration here. I think that kids should be like, they should be told how to discern truth in school. That should be like number one, they usually know, but then they get distortions on top of it. But
that's just it. There's no foundation of truth to begin with. So what you don't really know what's true. We don't know what's ultimately true.
Well, ultimately what's true is, so here's the thing, because a lot of that information is almost like encouraging people to give their power away to things outside of them. And then everyone who's at that level, who's very unhealed, because you're only going to keep giving your power away to things outside of you when you're very unhealed and you don't realize it's within you. You are it. So it's like, it's connected to like the people that are very unhealed. They're like, it's no different than people in a religion that need a savior, or people that think, oh, once I make this amount of money, then I'll be okay. Once I get to here, then I'll be okay. You're giving your power away to things outside of you, which is an illusion. And it's keeping you trapped in that cycle, and you're never okay with the now, and you never realize your true power. And the ironic thing is that all the negativity, all the terrible things happening, all the pain and suffering, well, suffering is actually it's almost like a useful tool to awaken you. But then once you awaken, then you don't need the suffering anymore. It's like Eckhart Tolle talks about this. Like, so all these people that are like giving their power away to the white hats and giving their power away to ETs to save us and all these things to save us are the ones that actually need the suffering to awaken then they can wake up to their true power. So it's like,
right,
they're trying to run from the thing they actually need. It's like almost.
Well, the pain and the discomfort it shows you where to focus.
Yes.
Like exactly. if there's pain and discomfort, go into it, because that's where your answer is.
Exactly.
That's what the answer is. And the desire to be rescued, that's an old story. It's like we all want to be rescued from our personal pain, but like the humanity wants to be rescued from the mess of humanity, right? But
we're the ones like, we have a part in this creation. That's what we
we are the creation.
We are the creation. Yeah,
and it's not until the moment that we claim that, and we're like, okay, it's uncomfortable, it hurts, but I'm going to go into it, because I know that on the other side, it's just me. It's more me, know, and I can expand into me and create from there. Like, it's a lot easier to create from wholeness than it is from these fragmented, parts of ourselves that we're walking around with if we're carrying all those wounds and all that pain.
And it's a lot easier to sit on your couch or at your keyboard and point fingers and put the blame everywhere else outside of yourself. And instead of like literally looking yourself in the mirror and addressing the areas that are being highlighted.
Even the blame, even the blame of the dark or the shadow, whatever you want to call them, it's like some part of us called them in. That's part of the initiation that Earth is going through. Like there is no creation without co-creation. Like we're always a part of all of it. So, the pointing the finger thing, everything is a reflection, and it's not like necessarily an exact reflection, but it's all a piece of something to look at within ourselves.
What do I need to heal within myself? What is this showing me? What is this trying to teach? That's the key. Everything, if you ask the question, what is this trying to teach me, for everything in your life that happens to you? Everything. Because the universe doesn't do things that don't have a purpose. Like that's not a thing. Things aren't random. Things don't happen that just are meaningless. That's not a thing. Everything is teaching you something. Everything is there for a reason.
There's always an offer for more growth, right? We're on an infinite journey. And that's the other part that I think I can't stress enough. It's like, this is an infinite journey. This is not destination oriented. We're not going to get swooped up and land in heaven. And it's, because I think
happily ever after. And that's
an idea that's going on too. Yeah. And, our souls are freaking infinite, and we're going to do this again and again. This is a painful point. This is a point of an apex where the energy has gotten to a certain, level, and there are some sort of critical moves to make, which I believe really, again, as we've been talking about, going inward and really claiming the power. It is a moment of transition. And if you sometimes I even look at this like as, a reflection of the experience of birth, because that moment of transition is when labor changes. And same thing, you can focus on the pain and the discomfort and, hightail it out of there, get a C-section, find some way to escape it, drugs and C-section, or you can go into it. And on the other side, you've got this gem. So that's essentially like the portal that Earth needs to, humanity is going through right now, if they choose. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's important that we take this stuff seriously. Something else you talked about in your chapter. It's, we don't have the luxury to be misusing our energy anymore. I feel like, once you're aware, there's no going back anyway, but take it seriously, but at the same time, don't like forget to have fun. Like, don't go, you need to maintain that balance. And, because it's not just about us, but as we work on ourselves, we're literally activating Mother Earth and like reigniting, the grid. And I guess you could say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And balance it with fun, for sure. I don't know if I said that in that chapter, but absolutely. I agree. Find ways to experience joy and.
Yeah.
You mentioned, we're here activating the Earth's systems. What did you mean by that exactly?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail just because that will be in the book, but basically the system is designed for our bodies to be an extension of her body and her energy to move through our body. We are a channel for her energy. So it all moves in one. We're part of her toroid. In other words, all life here is. And there is a collective consciousness that gets shared within that energy flow and exchange. And that's how we continue to create the world, the earth, right? So you can see how reclaiming that is really powerful, because the shadow right now is like, through some of those technologies, they're really working on a reverse flow of energy that does not go in alignment with her flowing through us, and that unity that happens when we can connect in that way and really harmonize with ourselves as an extension of her. We drop into a different point of consciousness where we're not so mind oriented anymore. It's not even about being heart oriented, although yes, much more than mind, but it's like deep body where we're trusting in this we are part of this group organism at that
Mhm.
point.
Right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
they want us to be part of their energy grid
Yeah.
that's created by,
Assimilation.
right. They're not,
Augmentation.
so they're
Yeah.
disconnecting us from the Earth's toroid energy field, and they're hooking us into their false matrix energy grid that, you know, they're encompassing the entire planet with via satellites and towers. So that's why, like, you insist that we take this seriously, because, you know, we need to get back and connect with Mother Earth again, so that other false system can't even exist anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's kind of the point of trauma too, right? Because it's the trauma that locks up that lower part of the body. It closes it down. It's like we automatically shut down, and that's our access point to the earth. So there's, you know, I mean, there's like multiple streams of in which ways that they really target. But trauma and abuse, this is why it's multi-generational. This is like one of very intelligent, clever tactics. We'll just teach them to suppress themselves. We don't even have to do it, right? And just that
They
is
do it
like
for us.
automatic disconnection from our bodies, from safety in our bodies, and from the earth and connection to the earth. You know, and then they've got all the other layers, but I did want to mention that layer because I think it's so important when you're working with trauma. And it doesn't even matter whether or not it's physical or sexual, although for a lot of people it is, but any kind of trauma is going to lock up that area of the body and shut it down.
Right.
Right.
And like you nailed it. Like, we're suppressing ourselves, and like they've done all the groundwork. So we're programming ourselves by the decisions we make every single day. And they know that the system's set up to support that. So they can just sit back at some point, basically, and allow us to do the work for them.
In a lot of ways, yeah. There's a lot of sort of hands-off autopilot happening.
Right. You
Yeah.
mentioned the 12 levels of consciousness in your chapter. I don't know if you have all of them memorized off the top of your head, but I thought it was really fascinating how you described them, and you correlated them to the 12 chakra system. Would you mind going into that a little bit?
Yeah, that's sort of a combination. It's come through from a combination of things that I've studied in a way to bring some organization for people, because I teach about consciousness and I teach about healing. So it's a way to break things down so that it makes sense to people how we individuate from source consciousness. So I work within the 12 chakra system, in that every chakra is part of a level of consciousness. So that's a level of consciousness that all beings and all energy is a part of, and our chakra is the part of our essence within that, if that makes sense.
Right.
So at source, source, everything is one. We're all one. It's that source point of infinite consciousness where everything is possible, and then we individuate from there. And so for me, that's the 12th chakra. That's pure oneness, and that's our sort of portion of that, right? That's where our spark of God comes from, or our co-creative consciousness comes from. And all of this, so for me, it's like a pillar of light that each individual has. And when we individuate from there, we start to get form and structure. And this is where some of the laws of the universe come in to create that form and structure. I believe you do get masculine and feminine, but they're working in harmony, so you don't quite have duality yet. And then when you move into the 10th level of consciousness, where that 10th chakra is, that's what I call the soul level. That's where the soul begins to individuate, and where different souls that are in resonance as far as what they might want to learn or how they want to grow, they find each other, and they work with some of these laws to create realities, to create systems, planets, where that desire for learning can take place. And so we've got lots, and there's lots of other stuff going on in that level of consciousness. It's like a very busy level of consciousness. It's where most channeled information comes from. It's where most galactic information comes from, most visitations come from. And then we go into our higher self, which really is like carrying the roadmap for what the soul chooses to learn in a particular embodiment. And for me, I'm really seeing that, we still do. I mean, we have multiple higher selves because we're multidimensional, right? One soul, so you could see it as like a wheel with the many spokes as the many higher selves. And what I see happening lately in a lot of people's experience of timeline convergence is these higher selves are coming in to one, because in order for this creation to be successful, we need all of our focus here as much as possible. So I'm really seeing the integration of that happening for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And then we start coming slowly, we start coming into the body. You have kind of the spirit realm or the astral realm where a lot of astral projection happens, and then start coming into the body through the crown, that gateway. And the crown's kind of an interesting space in that it is that gateway between body and these other levels of consciousness, what are sometimes referred to as higher levels of consciousness. And it's a space that a lot of energies like to try to grab at because it's that gateway. And if they can have access to it, then, yay, woohoo, for them.
Right.
A lot of cults they'll do like blessings and inject like energies into that area to try to, maintain some control over their individuals. And then, of course, we come into the head, which I really call the consciousness of mind. And even though we have so many psychic abilities in here, this really is mind. And so much going on here as well, on so many levels. And I can't stress enough that the level of unconsciousness that we have in our mind and the imbalance between the conscious and unconscious mind. And I truly believe the more of the unconscious that we can expand into, that's the goal. That's our expansion. That's our evolution. That's our success point. Whether this planetary design succeeds or not, as a soul and as a part of consciousness, it's the claiming of more of our presence here as we bring more of that unconscious conscious.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking our truth and really embodied sound. And I think this gets minimized too much. Our languages on Earth are all again, it's all designed with limitation, and our languages are incredibly limited, as particularly the conquering languages like English. There's intentionally just not certain sounds available. There's also intentionally certain sounds that were made to use a lot, because they either open or close energy. And I think this is a reason that light language has become, more and more prominent. And I know for me, when I speak light language, it really bypasses so much of those limitation frequencies, and I can get so much more information across in such a shorter amount of time, and
Right.
clear so much more energy.
Right. Well, they say the S is like a hissing sound that we make. And it's like that slask, that reptilian slask. And every time we say the word S, we're hissing, and just interesting.
And it's one of the most common letters in the English language.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, keep going. You're almost to the bottom.
Almost to the bottom. So
that was great. Yeah.
Heart, and really sharing that heart field and coming into compassion, embodied will in the solar plexus and on that entire level of consciousness, right? So as we're dropping further and further into this body and through these layers of consciousness, these are frequencies that it's not just within our body. Like, this is the frequency that we hit if we put our focus there. And that embodied will, our center is actually a really also pretty minimized. And there's a lot of abilities within that center that when we really are activated and we can pull our energy in from future and past, essentially like full presence into that center, there's a lot of power that gets activated, and a lot of abilities that get activated. And then moving into our emotional center and the center of really of creation. In that second level of consciousness, it's embodied creation. And of course, that's not just babies and birth and sexual energy, but that is part of it. But it's everything we create. And creative energy is so suppressed right now, but it's like art, movement, dance, singing, all of that keeps the energy flowing and moving and keeps us sharing information with each other. And when we share, we're activating each other and we're further building and progressing. It's like we're not meant to like not have momentum, and Earth is like so right now because we don't have any of that creative energy flowing to that degree. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Well, and then the sacral chakra, like that second level of consciousness you're talking about, that's targeted the most by entities. It's the easiest place to access through sexual energy, and that's why they want a hyper-sexualized society, and that's why it's promoted everywhere. This is how the entities attach to us, and this is how they control us and manipulate us. Therefore, suppress the creativity, so we're no longer creating. We're just operating, we're just functioning. We're not, they're trying to cut off that creativity, and they're promoting sex on all levels, starting at a young age now. And like I say, like we call them STDs, sexually transmitted diseases, but I say it should be demons, sexually transmitted demons. Because that's what happens. You start getting people who are unaware and they don't know anything about the sacred sexuality, and you're passing around these entities from one to another, and then you're picking up their trauma, they're picking up your trauma, and collectively it's a mess. And obviously
much gets exchanged at that level.
Yeah. I mean, I could go on and on. This is one of the subjects I'm writing about in my book, but that sacral chakra, that second level of consciousness, is that's their target point.
Yeah, there's a reason why basically everyone in the cabal is a pedophile, and why they like seriously, like they're all, there's a reason there. That's not just a random thing. Like there's a very specific reason for that, and it's everything to do with what you just said,
right?
And why they promote it, and why they're like openly promoting it and pushing it now,
and normalizing it, trying to. So then
I would add that the fear and terror that it also imparts, it makes it that much easier, right?
Right.
It's part of it with the pedophilia.
Right. So then moving on to the root chakra, the first level.
The first level of consciousness, like full embodiment and connection to the earth. And when that happens, when we can really, really land in that way, then we're really tapping into the oneness here. So we've got oneness at the top, oneness at the bottom. And one of the things I talk about is how creation is not a straight line. It's not. So as much as we just went, totally vertical, this all collapses and everything is one. And we're all one with all of it. And this is just like it's a dissection of oneness. That's how we could look at that. That's what's meant by the microcosm, right? And I think when we reach that point where we can fully embody here, then we have that direct line of consciousness that, we've filtered out so many of the distortions that we're able to just be in flow, and that energy flows up from below and it flows down from above.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like the antenna.
Yeah.
Well, that was fantastic. That was a beautiful explanation. You did have it memorized off the top of your head.
Yeah.
It's how I see things. So it's, it's easy. Yeah.
Right.
I'm also currently teaching a class in it, so I'm pretty in it at the moment too.
Right. So tell us a little bit more about your book that's coming up. where people can find you, what you offer, and we'll start wrapping it up.
Okay. Yeah. So more about the book is going to go into that story that I shared about touching that device in Antarctica. Gave me a lot of information about the structure and form of the planet and the devices and technologies and science behind it, science that comes from another planet. So that's in there. A lot of the energy activations for our DNA and for our connection and harmonization with the planet are in there. And a lot of healing practices for working through and going inside of some of these difficult emotions and experiences like shame, blame, guilt, fear, anger, resentment, ways to process and work with all of these. And then touching on, it also touches on the ways in which we can step more into empowerment of our joy and our, creation and creative energy here, and like really actually, be thriving. So that's, there's also there will be, so hopefully that's going to be done by the beginning of summer, and there will be a course attached to it. So it's been designed to be a living workshop. So people can buy the book by itself and go through it themselves. But we'll be leading it as a group through an activation process where they're having an opportunity of group support and one-on-one support. I also create sacred water essences that allow for support through the vibration of water that are encoded with light languages and crystals and different things. It really speaks to the subconscious, the water, and that percentage. Again, our bodies are, mostly water. The planet's mostly water. We didn't really go into inner Earth much, but there's a lot of water happening there. So this is a way to communicate without words. So again, words are limited. So that's a part of that as well. And those are available. I have those on Etsy and on my site. The first chapter of the book, as well as myself, you can find it at bethrachel.com. And I offer all different kinds of healing. I do obviously work a lot with trauma and repatterning the subconscious, but you don't have to have the kind of trauma I have to work on releasing limitations and coming more into your power. Everybody needs that as far as I'm concerned. I do work with, light language some. We work with beliefs a lot, and I would say some coaching in there as well.
Great. It sounds amazing. I can't wait for it. From what I've read already, guys, I'm not just saying this to flatter her on air. It really is it really is brilliant. The first chapter is incredible, and if that's any sign of what's to come for the rest of the book, I'm really looking forward to it. And since you mentioned Inner Earth, I'll give you 5 minutes to explain what you know about Inner Earth, starting now.
Okay, 5 minutes. Yes. So I will say there are many different crystal cities, and there are also, there's different depths of cities, right? So there's some cities that are closer to the core. There's some that are a little bit more closer to the surface. Part of the reason Mount Shasta is so well known and Telos is so well known is because it's actually pretty close to the surface. So that's why there's been more interactions with the people inside. And different cities, they have, different ways that they work with the energy of Earth, but they all work with the energy of Earth. They all work with water and plants a lot. They have different transportation systems than we do. And they all connect, but it's not a giant mass. It's more like, I've heard it described as honeycomb, which I think is pretty accurate, as far as my experience has been. And, my primary experiences with the crystal cities was for healing, so when I was like on the brink of death, and then some recovery. So I can tell you they have crystal beds for healing that are programmed to everyone's specific DNA. So the reason they work and they work so well is that when they put you in them, it automatically matches to the vibration of your DNA in its optimal state, and it brings you into that frequency. What else? I'm like trying to get as much in as quick as I can. What else? What else? There are some cities that are really deep, quite close to the planetary core that we don't see, we don't see a whole lot from, but they're doing really big, important work. And most recently, a lot of Arcturians are actually incarnating into that space to help move things along. I can also tell you that inner Earth people, they're basically humans. They're us without all the toxins, without all the suppression, without all the limitation.
DNA switched off.
What's that?
DNA switched off. Junk DNA.
DNA, switched off. I actually have some very interesting information in the book about DNA that was not switched off. So I think there's hope for us. Yay! And a lot of them, they want to help us. I think that's really what I'm trying to say. They want to help. They are cautious. They have been, a lot of them they're still playing light and dark too. They do it differently because they have a different level of consciousness than we do, but, and the dark's always trying to get into their cities and try to get the codes. And I've been put in that position before where I was the one that was supposed to get the code, or somebody was going to die, or, it's like, so that's something that's always happening. So it doesn't not exist there. It's just, it's different. I feel like the Matrix is kind of like it worked. It's pretty accurate as far as some of that,
you're talking about the movie.
When they start going into inner Earth, like not completely, but there's definitely a lot of veins of truth in that.
I think the way they depict inner Earth as being like a very dark place, a cold place. I think they did that in the movie to throw us off. They don't want us to know, like they don't want to put the idea in our minds how beautiful it could be down there.
It's very beautiful and very kind, and there's all kinds of animals that we don't have here that they have there, and it's just a completely different sense of harmony.
Right.
And there's a huge inner ocean that's not polluted. And they do have technologies that they want to share. They're waiting for us to get to a point, which I'm hoping is soon, but get to a point where working with us is I don't think, it's not that they feel like it's dangerous to them, but it's more like they want it to actually be used. It's like really for us to really be ready to use it, so it's not just like for nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
Or we'll take it, go ahead.
It's just a matter of how are things going to play out to where, because it's almost like, to me, like I see this big split happening where like there's like a lot of people awakening and like growing spiritually and awakening, and then there's a lot of people getting deeper in the fear and more in the fear, more mind controlled and programmed and angry and negative. And it's like, how is this? It's got to play out somehow, because I don't think it's going to be like, oh, the whole planet just suddenly is on the same page.
What I've seen,
how's that going to play out? No, and people are dying from the jab and from things, and it's like, there's threats of World War III is going to break out. Like, how is this going to play out? Or like, are millions of people going to die before things get better, or is there going to be some kind of like, Dolores Cannon always talked about the actual split where like 5D Earth and 3D Earth, and like at some point it's gradual until at some point like we won't perceive each other and we'll be on two completely separate vibrational Earths. But how is that going to play out?
Right. Yeah. What did you see?
What do you think, Beth? About all that?
Yeah.
What I always get shown is that there's basically going to be cities that emerge that are self-sustaining in certain pockets in the world. And I've been told that these are actually already being created that are in connection and working with Inner Earth. I have not seen them yet. And I'm like, well, I would like an invitation if that's true, but,
Right.
and that these will be in certain pockets, and grow. And beyond that, we'll sort of see what happens. Like,
Right.
as far as,
It makes a lot of sense.
yeah. And,
So the inner earth beings will be helping assist in creating those cities, I guess. And they're going to be, obviously, they're going to have to integrate. It's all going to have to be integrated somehow. And they can't necessarily exist on the surface anyway right now. It would actually be detrimental to their health and their energy body. Even like negative thoughts affect them because they're existing in a higher density. So, and then to define what you were talking about, there's like the surface level and then the civilizations lower, closer to the core. That's the difference between, from my understanding, hollow earth and inner earth. So inner earth is like the Agartha network that exists near the surface. And then the hollow earth are the cities that we hear like Admiral Byrd went to, that you would enter through the poles. I think that's
like
just
below
a good,
that, even like deeper.
right. Yeah. But near the core. But anyway, that's just one way to define it, I would say.
yeah, no, I think that's a good way to define it. And I have been shown one that, goes pretty close to the core, not necessarily right at the core, but what I get shown at the core is like these 4 chambers. It's definitely not made of metal.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And the planet is not, the mantle is not, like, because they try to, of course, they tell us, oh, yeah, there's nothing but lava on the inside.
Yeah, so you're not going to go looking there.
You'll burn up. You'll burn up.
No one's ever going to think to. So we're programmed to think life can only exist on the outside of a planet.
Oh, you know something crazy is that the life on the outside of the planet is 1% of the entire planet.
I believe
it. Humans are 0.01% of that.
Wow.
So I just always like to say that so that we take that in for a moment and recognize that, like, that's what it means to be part of oneness. Like, that's what we need to expand into. We need to go from like 0.01 to, into the whole percent of
changes your perspective a bit.
Yeah, it does, right? Yeah.
All right. Well, your 5 minutes is up. No.
Okay.
I'm joking. No, that was amazing. Thank you for explaining that. Inner Earth is one of the things we love talking about, and it's one of my favorites subjects. So
I did want to just say that in my experience, because I have had inner Earth beings come up to the surface, and I do think that they have ways of protecting themselves from our toxins and whatnot. Maybe not all of them, but in my experience, they have. It's more of like, they don't want to get caught up in our drama. Like, we're so addicted to drama right now. Like, that's, I think, more than anything, it's like, that's the toxicity they don't want, is like.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Lowell Johnson claims he's been in Telos and he got invited, and he gives his whole story of the whole tour he was given and describes it, and it's amazing. But he says the reason he was invited in there is because he was at a certain level, at a certain vibration, and they said he proved he could hold a 5-dimensional consciousness enough that, like, he could handle it, basically. And it's almost like you have to be at a certain level for them to even really interact with you. Otherwise, it's going to be detrimental to you and to them. Almost.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that they're going to invite the, like, junkie, on the corner.
Right. Or if you're not healed enough, because especially if they're very telepathic and empathic beings, so they're feeling everything you're feeling and your emotions, and that's affecting them. Like a lot of ETs, I've heard this a lot, where like they're like, your negative, your fear, your negative emotions actually hurt them physically.
Right. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah.
It's the same with these inner Earth beings. So if they're going to come up and interact with you, and you're you're hurting them with your fear and your negative emotions constantly, you know.
Right.
And then they're gonna, if you're not ready for what people would perceive as aliens or these crazy, you know, beings, that it could frighten a lot of people, and that could cause, you know. So you got to understand, like, we have to do the work, and we have to be ready for, because everyone wants disclosure, everyone wants contact. Well, it's like, well, what are you doing to be prepared? How are you facilitating that, you know?
Instead of sitting in our comment section telling us how we should do things.
Right. Instead of demanding it immediately, like some people, you know,
like they're paying us or something. Yeah.
Right.
I guess I just haven't experienced them as being so vulnerable. My experience of them has been like a thicker skin than that. But
well, they probably have ways of mitigating.
And there's different groups.
There's definitely
different groups. Yeah. There's different
absolutely
beings.
Yeah.
That's why we can't, you know, just like
you can't. There's no across the board.
Right. I think the bottom line is that a lot of them are willing to communicate telepathically. And this is what I always suggest to people, that it's like, if you want to start establishing, I communicate with them, you know, all the time telepathically. So it's like, if you want to start establishing that relationship and it's a goal of yours, then start checking in telepathically. Like, say hi and see if they're reaching out.
I did that, and I had one manifest in my basement. It wouldn't show up.
Literally. Well, you weren't ready, but still, like, because you weren't ready.
Yeah, it was pretty.
Maybe
wild,
now you would be.
An inner Earth portal or an inner Earth being?
A being. Yeah, they. It's a whole story. It's a long story, but the gist of it was, all I was doing was trying to connect with an inner Earth being at the time. Like, I became obsessed with it. And literally, like, after doing this for like 2 months straight, every night, trying to telepathically communicate, I had a series of events happen, and one phased into my basement. They weren't fully physical, and it was a blonde, tall female, and basically telepathically she told me, "Honey, you're not ready." And it was this whole download of like why my focus should have been on other things instead of trying to communicate with them at the time. And they kind of like steered me the direction I should have been going. And they said they'll still be there always, but it's not, it wasn't time. Like, that wasn't what I should be worried about, you know?
I love those humbling moments, don't you? Like, I remember having this experience when I was, I think, 19 or 20, working with this Lemurian crystal. And I went through this, it was not a physical teleportation, but it was a definite spiritual bilocation to the Pleiades. And there's this gorgeous, you know, Pleiadian woman standing there, and I'm asking her all these questions, you know, and she looked at me and said, "Shh," and then turned into this beam of light. And I was like, okay, got it. Yeah.
Right.
All right. Got it.
My favorite is when Daryl James told his story about encountering one of these like Arcturians or something. I forget which being. It might not have been Arcturians, but he said they like almost shapeshifted to mimic him and started mocking, like showing him how he looked, because he was kind of complaining. And so they almost were like mimicking him, just like mocking him, basically.
Cosmic clowning.
Right, exactly. Like this, like to show him what he looked like, how silly he looked, and like grow up, you know, basically. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. Guys, go check out her website, go read the first chapter of her book a session with her, and we look forward to the rest of the book. I can't wait for that. Thank you for joining us. Thank you guys for tuning in. We love you all. We hope to see you at the conference. Grab a ticket if you can make it. If you can't, grab a live stream pass. It's going to be a really cool enhanced experience this year. We look forward to seeing you guys there. Have a great evening. We love you, and good night.
Thank you.
There was a CIA director named William Colby who in the 1980s said, "We'll know our disinformation campaigns are successful when everything the American people believe is fake.
When we realize how powerful we are when we set our intentions and we realize that we aren't just this, we are just these multi-dimensional light beings, and time is an illusion, and it's everything's a perception, then you can go forward and backwards and embody it and just pop out and go and do this work. We can do amazing things when we set the right intentions to do it.
And I said, this is us on this plane. That's what this is. We're going to the moon. And he said, this thing is a lot older than you think it is. And we've been going to the moon a long time. But I wrote on it, I knew that we went to the moon. And so I always knew there was a base on the moon from a young age.
And our DNA is a complex recording system of the history of the entire universe, the history, of everything, that not just this timeline that we know, but multiple timelines of reality.
There are a total of 9 different categories of planets in the universe. We people on Earth, we are living on a category 1 planet, like elementary school students. And the Theobans, they are living on a category 9 planet, like college professors. So they have been really guiding us throughout history.
Teokum let us know that this facility under the Sandia Mountain is considered an information station for interstellar travelers coming to the planet. They tell us that their facility was retrofitted into the ancient tunnel system that already existed.
And as far as the bending the space-time continuum, I've had something like that happen. And what seemed like about a 5-minute encounter has been 4.5 hours of missing time. And I was completely conscious. And when you're dealing with a type 3, type 4, type 5 civilizations that can work with the different coexisting timelines, all bets are off, man.
Every time we have Bigfoot activity out there, we're having ETs and orbs and stuff like that. We have a lot of this stuff documented. As a matter of fact, I'm a member of 3 different teams, and I work with people from all over the country out in the field. And we actually have documented a portal, something that we consider to be a portal opening. And we sent 2 of our team members inside of it. And
Really?
They disappeared and then came back out.
I would suggest that we take it one step further and say humanity has never known who we are. We've always been in the thought control matrix. And one step further, perhaps we could say that we're in a consciously controlled state of hypnosis. In other words, are the thought control matrix creators constantly bombarding us with frequencies that keep us from being telepathic, that keep us from remembering who we are? And the thought control matrix was set up, and we have never known our potential, our power, our beauty, our incredible connection.
It makes no sense at all. There is no reason for it other than the programming that we've received for generations, because it's all about order. It's all about listen to your elders, listen to the teachers, listen to the adults, listen. And what that does is it dims the light of the child, and it makes them feel like they don't have a voice. And why that's designed that way by the dark side, and that's in the system, is so that they grow up and they just listen to, and they do what they're told, and they're good little boys and good little girls, and they lose their sense of self. They lose their north, their true north. Yeah. So many adults are walking around in this world, they don't know who they are.
So the planet itself is now beginning to split. It's beginning to divide again into a higher vibrational Earth and a lower vibrational Earth. And the race of man is dividing with it. And we're becoming less and less aware of one another. And over time, what will happen, and I don't know how long this will be, one world will have all higher vibrational beings on it, and the other one will all be third dimensional beings, and we will not perceive each other anymore.